If they could turn it off, it'd be great.
I can kill the heat if you want.
Yeah, if you want.
I would say turn
We
it
can
off.
hear a lot better.
Yeah. I'm used to that. You can move closer. It seems like you're way over there. You can move.
Sorry.
Well, I'd rather have all of you in the shot. We'll see if we get that turned off, and then we'll.
It'll stop as soon as it catches
Okay.
up. It'll quit.
Well, here's what we'll do. We'll go right to left and identify ourselves across the way, so that you all know who we are. How's that? Well, then I'll start off. My name is Steve Ridge, and I'm a licensed private investigator based in Iowa. I am not licensed in Pennsylvania, which means I can't see police files, and I consider that an advantage because I think that sometimes, taking a zero-based approach to a case is better than seeing where people left off. So, in any event, you want to identify yourselves?
My name is Alyssa Dees. I'm part of the team that runs the social media pages for Cherrie Mahan.
I am Janice McKinney. I am Cherrie Mahan's mother.
My name is Bailey Gazinski, and I am also part of the Cherrie Angels group.
My name is Christina Kaczynski. I'm also part of the Cherrie Mahan group.
So, and I know we're waiting for that to kick off, but I'm gonna go ahead. Just a little bit about my background. It's interesting when I bumped into several people already who knew me in another life because I actually ran the country's largest media research and consulting firm for 37 years, Frank Naggett Associates, and but after I semi-retired, I kind of returned to my original love, I guess, which is investigative reporting. And very early in my career, I hesitate to tell you, it was 1975, and I was working in television. We were still shooting film then and editing film, so live shots were not a thing yet. I actually got involved in a very complex double murder case and was enterprising enough to go out and locate a couple that I thought warranted talking to, and lo and behold, after I convinced them to do an interview, the next day they were charged with a double murder and were tried in that case. I will tell you, it ended up in an acquittal on a technicality, but somebody in town who still thought they were guilty burned their house down, so they left town. So, but that goes back to 1975, and as I moved through the media business, because I worked in local news in Sioux City and Cedar Rapids and Huntsville, Alabama, and Buffalo, New York, and when I worked for ABC in Buffalo, all of those stops, one of my points of emphasis was investigative reporting as a way to differentiate in a truly meaningful way what local television is all about and what good journalism is all about. And that was a difference maker. It was measured in research and sort of proven that the enterprise and investigative work that we were doing was fruitful and was resonating in the community. So that's my background. My motive, I wanted to address that on the front end. I really like to de-emphasize the source of the money in this case and all that. I know it's a sizable amount of money, but the one thing I will say about that is, to buy a lot of cars these days, high-end cars or whatever, I mean, it's $100,000 to buy a car. I mean, literally 98.5 and stuff like that for some of these high-end automobiles. And when I, at this point in my life, think about what I like to have one of those big, beautiful, shiny new cars, yeah, everybody wouldn't mind having one of those. But if I could invest that same amount of money in bringing Cherrie home, I would much rather do that. And I think most people would if they had the wherewithal. And so I don't know how to say other than I've only offered rewards in 2 other cases. And I'm not going to make a half practice of it or I'd run out of money. But I feel like I was called to do this. Let's put it that way. When I saw the circumstances of this case, I quickly determined that there was great momentum already underway. That the family had done their homework. The group that coalesced around Janice and the angels that are seated at this table, it's not all the angels, but a lot of them, were determined to move this case forward as opposed to simply commemorate the 40th anniversary. And so when I saw that, I thought to myself, when I saw that commemoration covered in the media, I thought, the unfortunate thing is all of these people show up, and then for the most part, the next few days, they say, oh, okay, well, my job is done. I feel good. I showed up and showed support. But what we have to do is capture the momentum and continue the momentum going forward. And so that's why I have chosen, I considered, is it 50 or is it 100? What am I going to do? And I just said, what? I'm going to go full tilt, go 100 grand, put it out there. I think that it will serve as an impetus to keep people thinking about this case. In a little bit, I'm going to show a visual that I think might help keep this case moving. And so that's my motive. And in terms of my approach, I kind of jokingly said something about it at the outset, but I like to take a zero-based approach to my investigations. I don't assume anything. In a case of a television anchor that was missing in Mason City, Iowa, there was a book that had been written about the investigation, and I didn't read the book intentionally because I didn't want to go down, I didn't want to get locked into a narrative. So I began my own independent investigation. I surfaced dozens of people that were never even talked to by the police. I went well beyond what the book talked about, and by doing a zero-based approach, you really are open, you stay open-minded, and your fresh leads can come to you on a continuous basis, and you can process all of that. The other thing that is really nice at this point is that artificial intelligence has reached a point where it can be applied in a very effective manner to databases as you build them. So when I build a database, I create files. The television anchor case, I now have 160 files, and I'm up to actually 978 people that I talk to. That's a lot of people to keep track of. But I have assistants, I have interns, I have people that assist me that create this database, and then we're able to digitize it all, and we're able to use artificial intelligence to process the data, and it helps fill in gaps for you or help you ask the next questions and that type of thing. So that's kind of the approach that I take, and it's the approach that I'm taking in this case, and that's why I don't really need to see the police files. I actually think I probably already know just about everything that's in the police files, and perhaps more, because the 4 people seated at this table have been a wealth of information. The inputs, the tips, the new information. I mean, it's almost like they have full-time jobs doing that. And I understand completely, because I tend to get consumed by cases myself, and you wake up in the middle of the night, you're like, oh, where's the pencil? I gotta write that down, or I gotta make a note to myself to check on that tomorrow or whatever. So I think we're at a really critical juncture with the case, and I'm pretty confident. I will tell you that I'm pretty confident actually at this juncture in the Pennsylvania State Police and the likelihood that they are going to be able to, bring potentially some legal closure to the case, at the same time, my concentration really is first and foremost on finding Cherrie, finding her remains, or clothing or accessories or something that will give us an indication of more precisely of what actually happened. And I think, this mom deserves resolution. And, the best we can do is bring Cherrie home and give her a proper burial. It's funny, she said, somebody might have thought this was a little crude. She said, I would settle for a bag of bones. But that's it. I mean, that's the honesty. She wants to know that's the best maybe she's going to get. But then she knows she has it, and she can bury Cherrie. So, I will tell you that if we're fortunate enough to do that, and that's what I put the reward up for, I want to recover and positively identify the remains. If we do that, we will improve exponentially the likelihood of a conviction in this case, because when a nobody case or a nobody circumstantial evidence case is very difficult to prove, and generally gets appealed, many times, and it just is so many hoops to jump through. So in this case, I think for sure if we were to recover remains, what we find, where we find it, it would be so telling. I mean, once you have that, you have a epicenter to work from. So that's what I'm hoping will happen. I will tell you, I'm going to be limited in what I say about what information I release today, because I really only want to continue to solicit input at this point. I've only been working on the case for 10 weeks, but I will tell you so much spade work has already been done that I am, I feel like I'm light years ahead of where I started in Mason City or down in Prairie Village, Kansas, or down in Naples, Florida, or I don't know, wherever I last was. But I will tell you, I am convinced that Cherrie knew her abductor. I don't think there's any doubt about it. I think that we already know to some degree who was involved, or at least has significant knowledge with regard to the case, and that is significant. I also will tell you that I am convinced through some fairly recent testimony and input that Cherrie's book bag was very likely submerged in a pond in an area very near her grandmother's home. And I am going to share a photo that I have used with Janice's help. I've actually had this produced just to show you what the bag looked like to the best of her knowledge. It had double handles at the top. It had a zipper on the top, and it had a zipper midway down the side pocket. Well, think about it. Even if this bag were, no longer, intact or what have you, or had anything inside of it, or even if it got burned. I mean, the fact is, there's probably a residual couple of zippers, that were there. And, I mean, that's what investigations are all about. So, I believe it's important to try to visualize cases as much as possible. And I don't want to shift the emphasis exclusively to trying to find, this blue bag. But it's probably, more likely that we might find this, because if it was submerged in a pond for a year and then pulled out when people there feared that the cops might be closing in to look at the pond, they may have been rather careless of where they put it after that. They were just looking to get it out of the pond. And it could have been thrown in a ditch. It might not have been incinerated. I mean, who knows? So even though it's 4 years later, this is still something that we should be looking at. And if not, if it's not the bag, keep it in mind, because maybe you know something. Maybe someone knows something. In all these cases I work, people always know stuff. They just don't come forward with it. They're either scared, they think there'll be retribution. They're not comfortable speaking to the police. I mean, probably most of the calls I get, people tell me, well, you know, I've had this information, I've been sitting on it, I really don't want to, you know, talk to the cops about it. I don't want them to come to my house and my neighborhood. I just rather leave it alone, but let me just give you this bit of information. And so I will say that while I appreciate the input that I get, and you know, the Angels have a Facebook page where you can readily give input, which is a great place to do it, but I would also strongly encourage people to consider talking to the state police, okay? I'm just a big believer that this has to be a cooperative venture. We don't want to work independently. I don't want to do anything to supplant the state police. As a courtesy, I touched base with them and sort of sought their blessing to my work. I don't expect them to share anything with me. On the other hand, I will be happy to share things with them as I come across them. I would much rather get it in their hands and complete the mosaic or the puzzle of this case in a way that justice can be done than for me to assemble and say, aha, I solved this crime. Because I'm not going to solve it. You have to have a crime solved, you have to have a conviction. So I'm not going to be the guy convicting anyone, but I can help and will help. I was already approached, even with the free publicity from some of these organizations that are present here today. I've gotten a dozen tips. I had 5 or 6 people approach me just prior to this press conference with new information. There is a wealth of information out there. If we can keep the momentum going on this case, I guarantee you that we are going to significantly advance it, and I think there's every likelihood that we're going to solve it. So, I know I rambled a lot. That's kind of my setup, and Janice agreed to join me and to answer any questions. I might have to defer to her. She probably is in a position to be more open than I am about what may be suspected, only because I really have to kind of play my cards close to the vest initially, and I don't want to get out there with information that's going to scare somebody away. Okay, if I say something, you know, then they don't want to talk to me. I want people talking to me, and that's my specialty, by the way. I find a way to get people to talk to me. And in the Mason City Anchor case, the guy had dropped out and went away for 24 years. When I went out 4 times to Phoenix and managed to get him to talk to me. And then a few years later, last December, he actually passed away. He was the leading suspect. So in 29 years, I'm the only person he ever talked to about the case. And I have 11 hours of, you know, in essence, record of that case. And he would not cooperate with the police. So hopefully, you know, one way or another, we're going to get the information we need. So let me open it up, and you can shoot at me, or shoot at her, or shoot at them.
Janice, if we could talk about this in a fashion of it's one more attempt, one more step. Each one of those steps, each one of those attempts requires an inordinate amount of faith on your behalf. Where do you find that?
I truly have dug very deep to find my faith, because this has been the hardest 40 years of my life. And all I truly want, and I know, is that Cherrie wants to come home. She wants to be found. She wants us to figure out what happened and to bring her home to me. My mother was a big believer, and she has passed that on to me. I am not as good as she was, but I know that God gives me the strength just to get up every single day and do more. And I want to help. I want everybody to know this is not easy. It's not for the faint-hearted. And I have had people standing behind me just giving me the strength. And the last 6 months have been
1 second.
so amazing. So I am very thankful for everybody that has been here and has been helping me to get through this, because it's hard.
People have help over and over and over again, and there may be, and you know this happens, people get kind of exhausted of an issue. This, however, brings it back to the forefront. And to those people who are like, I don't know if they're ever going to find her, what do you say to those people in their soul and heart?
I have never ever given up hope. And hope is something that we all have to have. Because without hope, you can't live at all. And I have a lot of hope that I know we're going to find Cherrie and we're going to bring her home.
You mentioned asking people to speak with state police. From what you investigating, I know you're not going to reveal so much what you said, what you found, but by asking people to talk to state police, do you believe that there is evidence to, I don't want to maybe not reopen, but to further investigate what you've discovered and maybe even eventually press charges?
I do. I think there's an abundance of information. I think it's been just below the surface, which can happen, particularly given the length of time. But I've already received, a number of highly credible inputs from people that sync up with information that we have already had in some fashion. And so I'm confident I'm going to get everything I need to essentially find some resolution in this case. I want to make sure we're also getting it in the hands of the state police, and for them to get it firsthand is ideal. If it comes through me, fine. They'll still get it, but it's not necessarily the same as getting it firsthand. And I think it's time for people to come forward and speak up. So that's one hell of a lead, really. I mean, you don't often have something like that, and I think I've got good, credible testimony that did in fact happen.
Do you have anything other substantial besides the bag that you'd be willing to share with us?
I actually am going to limit. This is so hard for me. I'm usually I love to get information out there, but it's a little premature for me to be doing that because I have to put it through the test. How is releasing this information going to solicit further engagement and input? And if I can't pass that test with it, I don't think just entertaining the public is a very good idea. I really think it needs to be, with purpose that you're putting this information out, and it has worked very successfully for me in other cases to where, I essentially have gone to probably 12 or 15 separate findings that I've posted in cases over the last 6 years. And one thing does lead to the next, and you can't overwhelm people. In fact, if you throw too much information out there, then it all gets muddled. I'd rather stick with one thing today. Anybody know anything about that blue bag? Your residual from it. If that would be a huge step forward, and if we don't have any success there, or whether we do or not, I can guarantee I'll have additional information that can be shared. We'll kind of decide who's going to share it. I mean, because the Angels here are terrific, and they're great. They're younger, better media people, so I probably need to let them start talking. But I will continue to share information as we go.
The information that you've been getting, is it continuing to connect the dots to somebody who's already behind bars on child molestation charges?
I think, do you feel comfortable addressing that?
I think you can say that.
Go ahead.
Yes.
And see, there's an example where I'm certainly very aware of all the information they have, but I'm not there yet, okay? And I've got to be very careful about not stepping ahead in that front.
So do we.
Yeah.
Well, yes, yeah, you do, but you you just say, okay, sue me. Right? Okay.
Yeah, another private investigator recently examined the case, Ken Mahan, and I watched the hour-long video he put out after, and he really focused on not the van, but a blue compact car. I don't know who's best suited to address this, but do you guys put any stock in that theory? And is that kind of part of the path you seem to be on right now with this book bag and this person who is behind bars?
Yes. I do want to confirm that Ken Mahan's, he's not a licensed private investigator. He's actually a cold case detective with extensive law enforcement background. But yes.
Okay. Yes, that you do put stock in that theory, and it's kind of connected to what we've been discussing so far.
Yes.
Okay.
We believe that the van was used more so as a distraction, a red herring, rather than the vehicle that Cherrie got into.
In your discussions with state police, have you talked about that if anyone comes forward that if they provide information that previously they might have been threatened for prosecution or charges themselves will now be protected?
I have not had that specific conversation, but I'm glad you raised it because I do think I have had experience with people coming to me and saying, look, I'm not guilty of the primary crime here, but I was dealing drugs then, I was running guns, I was whatever, and I just don't want to, walk into that situation. I mean, I've gotten in touch with assistant DAs before and said, look, I think I've got somebody that, if you would be willing to work with them. And so that is a place where I can be an intermediary, if you will. Because you never know what the police are going to say. Will they cut you a deal for information? They might, but you never know for sure.
But any of the current leads you have right now, you don't believe this would be an issue as of this moment?
Well, I hesitate to characterize these because I think we're still unraveling. It's a can of worms, okay? The other thing I guess I would say is, and we were talking about this before because I asked Janice over lunch, or breakfast I guess it was, we were still eating at lunch. But anyway, I said, 40 years ago, is it fair to say that, child molestation really wasn't on your radar? Because it was a different time. And what I have found is that in this area, in some pockets, specific pockets of this area, child molestation was a very, very serious pattern that was going on. A lot of families, where it was being carried on generation to generation. A lot of neighborhoods being exposed. And so, I do think that there have been a lot of people who have committed crimes who, but didn't molest necessarily, or certainly didn't abduct and murder Cherrie.
Is there anybody have you guys thought about talking to the person you suspect might be behind it, who's you allege might be in prison?
Well, I can say that I have attempted communication with everybody that is on my radar so far. I haven't been entirely successful, but we'll see how it plays out. Sometimes it takes a little time, and you have to just kind of stay at it. But I feel like I have a good half dozen people that I need to talk to hear their story.
You mentioned the use of AI in some cases. I mean, you have, say 1,000 conversations you've had or something like that. Can you talk through in a little bit more detail, what have you actually been able to synthesize in the cases where you use the AI, right? What useful piece of information is that spitting out for you that maybe you couldn't have done 10 years ago?
Well, what it'll do, it will connect dots, and sometimes in pretty obscure ways. Our angels, it's okay if I play angels, isn't it? Okay. Our angels will tell you that the way these family trees go and all that, and people marry certain people, and then they have two kids. They had one kid by this marriage and one by that, and then they were off here. I mean, it's a spaghetti chart, and you almost need, a massive whiteboard with, on CSI, of course, they have neat little pictures, and then a little, felt cord going from one to the next and all that. But it is a very complex thing, and sometimes to the naked eye or to the naked brain, if you will, it's hard to connect those dots. And so AI is a way to synthesize and sort of raise at least what the possibilities are. The other thing that I have used, I have contracted with a firm that specifically uses the dark web as well in some cases, and that can be very helpful. So far, I haven't gone there in this case because I think we have enough to work with. I mean, I'm pretty confident about where we are on this case. And by the way, that's 10 weeks in, and in Mason City, Iowa, I'm 6 years in. Okay, so I consider myself very fortunate to have come along at this particular time, and I want to support and continue the momentum. We have to have a relentless pursuit of this case with reports as often as they're warranted. The tip of the day, even, or whatever. I mean, and I realize that obviously news broadcasts and even online can't be an endless string of suppositions or whatever, but I think it's good to ventilate these cases and have transparency as much as possible, and that's why I feel a little bad that I'm not able to say more today. I certainly think that in a matter of weeks or months I could give you 10 bullet points instead of 2.
What specifically do you want people to do in terms of the visual you gave us today with the book bag? Do you want people to start looking around the area for traces of that? And what's going to make the difference now versus 40 years of looking for leads on it?
I'm not suggesting that people go out and search their neighborhood. I mean, I think it's more a matter of do they recall perhaps having had occasion where they either saw something or something was discarded, or I mean, even if it was a long time ago, it could have been something that the Salvation Army or Goodwill or somebody had on hand, or maybe they found some stuff burned out and they're going to get rid of it, and there were some zippers. It's more a matter of what do you recollect rather than going out and physically trying to find something at this juncture. But you never know. I mean, tomorrow somebody could be out on a hike or mushroom hunting or whatever, and all of a sudden, oh my gosh, this is part of a blue bag. So it's an awareness factor. Is that fair?
And how are people to come to you with the leads?
Well, I think I would just tell them, again, I'm going to suggest they go to the state police or to the Angels or to me, because we're going to be coordinating now from here on out. We've already been comparing notes on a regular basis, and we'll find a way to continue that. And I'm certainly going to have a physical presence here. I will tell you the place that I had to go in the last couple of days, I guess it was, when did I get to town? Saturday, I guess, yeah. And I went over to the location on Corn Planter, where we're quite sure Cherrie was abducted. That was a pretty moving experience, to stand there and look up what was formerly the driveway that she was going to walk up. It's etched in my mind now, and it will drive me. It will drive me on this case. And so, it's an awareness factor. People just gotta use your brain, think about it, look around. What do you know? What are you hearing? there are going to be a ton of tips come in after all this hits the media.
Are you able to reveal where the grandmother lived, where Cherrie lived? How close she lived to the grandmother?
Well, the new home you mean, is that what you're asking about? Because there's the Tower Road.
The old home.
Oh, okay.
Where she lived, where did the grandmother live versus you allowed to reveal that?
I will only say it was a space that had a pond on it. Do you want to?
Where my mother lived, Cherrie's grandmother, we lived on Tower Road. And then I got married, we moved to Saxonburg, and then we bought the trailer in 82. And then we moved to Cornplanter Road in 84, and then she was kidnapped in 85.
But it would be significant if you think about it. That means that in 85, when she was kidnapped and the book bag was taken from Cornplanter Road, how did it end up very near her grandmother's house where she used to live? Okay, that's a pretty significant thought right there in and of itself.
Janice, can you kind of speak on how it makes you feel that 40 years later there's still little tidbits of evidence that we can hold on to for any hope?
That's it, hope. Without hope, I would not be here, because the not knowing is truly scary, because I have spent most of my life looking for Cherrie, and you know, without hope, I would not be here today. She was my life. She was my everything.
One thing I will, I want to make sure you were finished, but one thing I will say, I asked her today, I said, well, I'll be honest, I said, were you a little skeptical when you heard this guy when I was going to come in with a $100,000 reward? And she said, yes, I was. And I expected that, right? And I needed to meet her to, you know, really put this together. But see, I think that is the fear of a new hope that's going to let me down, right? That's what I think is there. And it didn't take us long to break through that, because she sees, you know, what I'm all about and what I'm trying to do. But you don't want to, when you're in that state, you don't want to lurch for the very next thing. It's every day a new hope. That's tough. It beats the hell out of you. And I've seen this with other cases. I mean, her experience, I have witnessed firsthand in several other cases. And the common bond is all the same. And I can't feel it, but I can see it. Okay, and I can try to do something about it. And these ladies can help do something about it. People can make a difference. We've already kicked around the idea that once we bring Cherrie home, that we're going to be a road show, you know, and go out and show people how to do it. This is how crimes are going to get solved, because now with the internet and searchability and artificial intelligence and everything else that's going on, amateur sleuths are going to make a contribution and are going to solve cases. And you look at the popularity of these true crime podcasts. I mean, I've been on, I don't know, 20 true crime podcasts in my cases and stuff like that. And back when I was a news reporter and doing investigative work, you know, there were no podcasts. Well, there were no cell phones either. So I mean, times have changed.
No. So I do have a question. So in cases like this, really cold cases that depend on tips from the public, is there and you're an experienced a private investigator with some experience, is there a way of telling which tips are more credible than others, or are all tips really as credible as anyone else's?
That's an excellent question, and I think I'll give this answer, but I think these ladies will affirm my answer, and that is with repetition of taking tips over time, you quickly learn how to discern whether it appears to be legitimate and how legitimate versus just sort of random input or anything else. You train yourself to kind of not that you're going to discard anything, because you need to record every tip and take it seriously, but you can almost tell. I had a couple of conversations prior to this press conference, and I know that what I was hearing is legitimate, okay, and I need to be looking into it. So we learn how to do that. That's part of the skill development or whatever. But that's a really great question, actually.
I will say, we receive tips daily still, and as Steve said, we can read some and know if we believe that's what happened to Cherrie or not. It's very quick to decipher that, but no matter what tip, I pass it immediately along to Corporal DeLuca, the main detective on our case.
Have we worn you out yet? You've worn us out. But I gotta thank Mom here for believing in this process, because I think we can get there. I really do. I feel it in this case, and that's why I went all in, full tilt, because I think this can make a difference. We have to elevate this to the level of attention among a broad array of audience, to where they're going to, help bring closure. So I thank you all for being here, and I thank Mom for putting up with this. If anybody wants a closer photograph of this, you're welcome to take it. It's the only one. I don't have it digitally, because this was, but if you